conventional coming-of-age novel usually focuses on someone at the end of their youth up against a symbolic array of forces that they perceive as evil, but must eventually realize are necessary for the greater good. Heather O'Neill's Lullabies for Little Criminals, on the other hand, goes in the complete opposite direction. This is coming of age in quotation marks, the caveats being drugs, prostitution, childhood trauma, abuse, poverty, urban decay, and mental illness. The novel is part young adult and part trauma fiction, but more than anything is a magical story set in a very non-magical place. Lullabies tells the story of a 12-year-old girl named Baby, who must day in and day out put up with the antics of her unpredictable and frivolous dad. Jules, her father, is a heroin addict who's just moved to Montreal, and for the first part of the novel, spends most of his time hanging around Montreal with other drug addicts and deadbeat criminals. We learn that he's just been that way since his girlfriend, Baby's mother for that matter, was killed when they were young lovers. On the other hand, Baby is still very exploratory and, well, baby-like. She's adventurous and playful, and marvels at the little things, like living above a restaurant where she can see the sign's lights at her windows. It's an ironic life through rose-colored glasses depiction of an unconventional childhood endured through abject poverty. Well, that is until her father goes into rehab and she must travel to a foster home. This is where the novel begins its downward spiral. Baby, thrust from her home and needing to assert new responsibilities, is unable to even understand how to grow up properly. Suddenly, the dolls and the felt markers she carries in her bag seem laughable to the other kids who hope to jump into adulthood as quickly as possible. Once she's sent back home to Jules, she realizes that he is a more quiet and distant man. She must find replacements for him then, and we can only read helplessly as she falls prey to an alluring but morally disfigured pimp known as Alphonse. Lullabies for Little Criminals is an odd book in that Baby never seems to communicate the anguish that she is going through. Through a bubbly and even synesthetic way of speaking, she shields herself, and the reader for that matter, from the trauma she must endure. On a social level, it's interesting to see how Heather O'Neill indicts the foster system for merely harboring the troubles these kids are trying to avoid. But I think it's more interesting to analyze the literary qualities of this book. For example, why does Baby speak the way she does? At the core of this novel is the traumatic incident of Baby's mother's death, which affects Baby's father so much that he literally can't move on. He's a child, and Baby even points this out at one point. He has no concept of money, has a short fuse, is easily drawn back to drug abuse, and worst of all disregards Baby at any moment's notice. It's almost like she's raising him at times. Baby, of course, must consequently suffer too, as Jules' trauma has made him a terrible father. The death haunts them not by causing anguish, but rather by causing nothing at all. Jules has all but erased the trauma from memory, and this in turn has created a hole in the fabric of time. He is ageless, and so is Baby. Her name is indicative of this as well. She is both a toddler and, sadly, at this formative stage of her life, a sex object as well. In an interview with her publisher HarperCollins, Heather O'Neill compares her young protagonist to Salinger's Holden Caulfield, and how this too is a novel about growing up disillusioned and confused. Catcher in the Rye gave a voice to youth who were sick of being treated as naive, who saw the world for its foibles and when everyone else was just a phony. O'Neill channels Salinger, yes, but Lullaby shows how far the coming-of-age novel has come. It is a deep study of melancholia, but also a love poem to childhood. For example, at one point the narrator says, "When you're young enough, you don't know that you live in a cheap, lousy apartment. A cracked chair is nothing other than a chair. A dandelion growing out of a crack in the sidewalk outside your front door is a garden. You could believe that a song your parent was singing in the evening was the most tragic opera in the world." Her father, the city, and society have failed her, but she still finds an escape through a flowery, poetic voice that makes her an unforgettable character and a figurehead for the beauties and mysteries of childhood lost in maturity.